There is a bottle of wine sitting on a table in front of two people. Same bottle, same glass, poured at the exact same time. The only difference is what they were told before they drank it. One person was told the wine costs $12. The other was told it costs $350. Guess which one tasted better? And here is where it stops being funny. Scientists didn't just measure what people said. They scanned their brains. And the person who believed they were drinking the expensive wine showed measurably more activity in the brain's pleasure centers. Not opinion, not imagination, actual neurological pleasure from a price tag. That result should stop you cold. Because if a number on a label can change what your brain physically experiences, then what else has been shaping your reality without you knowing it? This isn't a video about wine, or luxury, or money. This is a video about why your brain is not the neutral observer you think it is. Why expensive things genuinely feel better, even when they aren't. And why the people who understand this rule quietly use it to control how everyone else feels about everything. Stay with this, because by the end, you will never look at a price tag the same way again. Let's go back about 2 million years. Early humans didn't have banks or salaries or credit scores. What they had was a group. And inside that group, your survival depended almost entirely on where you stood. High-status individuals got first access to food, to mates, to protection. Low-status individuals got what was left, or nothing. In that environment, broadcasting your value wasn't vanity. It was survival. So the human brain evolved to care deeply about status signals, to treat them as life or death information, and to reward you with real neurochemical pleasure whenever you successfully displayed one. That wiring didn't go anywhere. You still have it. Every person reading this still has it, and it fires every single time you interact with something that signals high status, whether or not anyone else is watching. Which explains why holding an expensive object feels different from holding a cheap one, even when nobody is in the room with you. Your brain isn't performing for an audience. It is running ancient code that hasn't been updated in 2 million years. And that code says, this is a survival advantage. Reward it. But here is the part that most people miss entirely. Status is only the first layer. The deeper layer is something that works even when status is completely irrelevant. Something that operates inside a blind taste test, inside a hospital, inside a sealed laboratory where no one can see you and you have no idea you're being studied. Psychologists call it the placebo effect of price, and it is one of the most reliably replicated findings in all of behavioral science. You already know what a placebo is, a sugar pill that works because the patient expects it to. What you probably don't know is that the price of a placebo dramatically changes how effective it is. In one study, patients received what they were told was a new painkiller. Half paid full price, half were told the pills were heavily discounted. Same pill, same dose, same chemical compound. The full-price group reported significantly more pain relief. The price changed what the drug did to their bodies. Now apply that to every product you have ever bought, every meal you have ever eaten, every experience you have ever paid for. If you knew the price first, and you almost always do, that number was already reaching into your perception and reshaping what you felt. The expensive coffee doesn't just taste better because you believe it should. It literally tastes better to you because your brain has already prepared a richer sensory experience in anticipation. You have never experienced a single thing in unfiltered reality. You have always experienced the version your expectations created first. This should make you deeply skeptical of your own certainty, especially the certainty that says you would have noticed the difference anyway. You wouldn't. No one does. That's the whole point. But even this doesn't fully explain the depth of what's happening. Because the placebo effect of price still treats you as an individual, a single brain, a single nervous system responding to information. And humans are not just individuals. We are social creatures down to our cellular architecture. And the third reason expensive things make people happy is the most socially complex reason of all. It is identity. Somewhere around adolescence, the human brain begins doing something it will never stop doing, building a story about who you are and defending that story against contradiction. This is not ego in the negative sense. This is basic psychological architecture. You need a coherent sense of self to make decisions, to navigate relationships, to persist through difficulty. And objects, it turns out, are one of the primary tools humans use to construct and communicate that self. This is not modern. Archaeologists have found evidence of status objects, shells, pigments, arrangements of bone, in sites dating back 50,000 years. Humans have always used things to say something about who they are. What expensive brands figured out, long before psychologists could explain it, is that a high-price object doesn't just sit there being useful. It becomes an identity anchor. A chapter in the story you are telling about yourself. When you buy something that costs significantly more than the functional equivalent, you are not just buying the thing. You are buying membership in a category. And your brain rewards you for that membership with a genuine emotional surge, because the story just got better. Here's a simple way to see this clearly. Imagine two people wearing identical black t-shirts. One costs $9, one costs $400. If both people know which shirt is which, they will feel different wearing them. Not because the cotton is dramatically superior, because one shirt carries a different story. And the brain doesn't distinguish between the story and reality. It responds to both with equal seriousness. This is why unboxing videos generate millions of views. Why people line up overnight for product releases, why the moment of acquisition feels almost ceremonial. You are not just receiving an object, you are receiving a new version of yourself, and your brain is celebrating the transition. But now we have to talk about what happens next. Because this is where the whole thing starts to unravel in a way that explains why people who can most afford expensive things are sometimes the least happy about buying them. Your brain is a change detector. It is extraordinarily sensitive to new information, new stimuli, new inputs. But it is equally extraordinarily good at tuning out anything that becomes constant. You stop hearing your refrigerator within seconds of turning it on. You stop feeling your shirt within minutes of putting it on. Your nervous system decides that stable, unchanging information is not worth its energy, and it redirects that energy elsewhere. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. And it applies to happiness as reliably as it applies to everything else. When something good enters your life, a raise, a new relationship, an expensive new purchase, your brain registers it as a change and dopamine floods in. You feel genuinely great. But your brain also has what researchers call a happiness set point, a baseline emotional state that it gravitates back toward no matter what happens. Within weeks, sometimes days, the emotional response to the new thing returns to exactly where it was before the thing arrived. The watch becomes just a watch. The car becomes just a commute. The bag becomes just something you put your things in. And this is the deepest cruelty of it. Because the reason expensive things feel so promising in the moment of desire is that they seem to promise a permanent change. Not just a spike of pleasure, but a new level. A new baseline, a new you, and that promise is almost always false. But the brain, ancient and stubborn, keeps believing it. Which is exactly what every luxury marketing department on Earth is counting on. Now here is something the research found that almost nobody expects. Hedonic adaptation doesn't happen at the same rate for everything. Some purchases fade in days. Others sustain genuine happiness for months or years. And the difference between them completely overturns what most people believe about how to spend money. Material things, objects you buy and own and display, adapt out the fastest. The new car adapts faster than almost anything else because you experience it the same way, on the same roads, going to the same places, every single day. There is nothing new for your brain to register. So it tunes out. Experiences adapt far more slowly. Not because they are inherently more valuable, but because a memory is a living thing. It changes every time you revisit it. The difficult parts soften. The remarkable parts sharpen. Over time, a good experience doesn't just maintain its emotional value, it often increases it. Psychologists call this rosy retrospection. The $100 concert ticket might generate more total happiness over the following year than the $1,000 handbag. Not because concerts are objectively superior, but because memories compound in a way that objects cannot. But here is the nuance that the experience versus things debate always misses. Some objects refuse to adapt out, and they do it by behaving like experiences rather than things. The piano that someone actually learns to play. The camera that carries you into a practice that keeps growing. The bicycle that takes you to new places. The kitchen knife that keeps teaching you something every time you use it. These objects don't get tuned out because the relationship with them never becomes static. Every session is slightly different from the last. Every use adds a layer. The object is a portal to continued experience. And experienced this way, it generates happiness that doesn't fade. it deepens. The secret is not what you buy. It is what the purchase keeps opening up for you. Now let's talk about the social layer of all of this, because it changes the picture in ways that are genuinely uncomfortable to look at directly. Research in social psychology has documented something that should make everyone at least a little uneasy. People are treated differently based on the visible signals their possessions send. Significantly differently. In controlled studies, individuals wearing luxury clothing were consistently rated as more competent, more intelligent, more trustworthy, and more worth listening to than identical individuals in budget clothing. Same person, same behavior, same words, different clothes, different world. This has real effects. Job interviews go differently. Negotiations go differently. First impressions calcify into assumptions that are very hard to undo. And if the expensive object changes how the world responds to you, if it literally opens doors that wouldn't otherwise open, then some of the happiness it generates is not illusory at all. It is the happiness of a world that is treating you better, which is real, and which makes the whole topic considerably more complicated than it first appears. But this social layer also creates a trap, and it is one of the most insidious traps in modern consumer psychology. When your happiness from expensive things starts to depend on external validation, on being noticed, on receiving the compliment, on seeing the reaction, you have handed the controls of your own emotional state to other people. Your satisfaction requires an audience. Your good mood needs someone to confirm it, and your sense of self becomes rented from the opinions of strangers. This is the mechanism behind what economists call conspicuous consumption, spending not for the enjoyment of the thing, but for the visibility of the spending itself. Not buying the object, but buying the signal that you could buy the object. And research shows a pattern that reveals exactly how this trap works in practice. Middle-income consumers spend a higher proportion of their income on visible luxury goods than genuinely wealthy consumers do. Among the ultra-wealthy, spending actually tends to shift toward things that carry no outward signal at all. Private experiences, understated objects that only fellow insiders would recognize, or simply time which cannot be displayed or photographed. The people who most need to prove they've arrived spend the most proving it. The people who no longer need to prove anything mostly stop trying, which raises the sharpest question in this entire subject. If luxury spending is partly about signaling status, and the most status-secure people spend least on signals, then what are everyone else really buying? The honest answer is safety. Not physical safety. Psychological safety. The quiet, deep need to feel like you are enough. Like you belong. Like the struggle was worth it. Like you have arrived somewhere that matters. That need is one of the most universal human experiences that exists. It cuts across income levels, cultures, ages, and it is not shallow. It is not vanity. It is the echo of 2 million years of a species that survived by belonging to groups and perished when it was cast out. The problem is not the need. The problem is that expensive objects are a genuinely unreliable way of meeting it, because the safety they seem to offer is conditional on keeping up, on the next purchase, on the reaction of the next room you walk into. It is a floor that requires constant maintenance, and it never quite becomes solid ground. And this is where the whole story arrives at its most important insight. Because the research on lasting happiness, not spikes, not moments, but genuine sustained well-being, points consistently towards something that has no price tag and cannot be displayed. A sense of growth, meaningful connection, a feeling that your life is going somewhere you actually chose. None of those things are for sale, not directly, but some expensive purchases, the right ones at the right moment, can point toward them, can open the door. The expensive cooking class that turns into a lifelong practice. The instrument that opens a relationship with music that reshapes how you experience silence. The trip that dislocates your assumptions and leaves you a slightly different person than you were when you left. These experiences are not cheap, but the happiness they generate is not from the price. The price is just what it costs to be in the room where something real happened. And this is the distinction that separates the people who find genuine lasting happiness from expensive things, from the people who find only a temporary rush, followed by a hunger for more. It is not how much they spent. It is the quality of attention they brought. The same watch, worn with genuine curiosity about what went into making it, becomes a different object than the same watch worn as a trophy. Not because the watch changed, because the relationship with it changed. One relationship keeps giving. The other extracts everything in the first week and leaves you empty. Your brain is not a passive receiver of experience. It is an active manufacturer of it. And the raw material it works with is not just what you have, it is how present you are to what you have. This is the uncomfortable truth at the center of everything we have explored. The wine experiment that opened this video wasn't just revealing the power of price, it was revealing the power of expectation, attention, and belief to shape what you actually experience. Which means the most powerful and the most dangerous thing about expensive objects is not that they are expensive. It is that they carry an enormous amount of meaning. And meaning shapes experience more completely than any ingredient, any material, any craftsmanship ever could. Give something meaning and it will reward you. Let something become background noise and it disappears, no matter what it cost. So the real question was never whether expensive things make people happy. They do sometimes temporarily, for specific reasons we can now trace exactly. The real question is, what are you actually buying when you reach for something expensive? If you are buying the signal, the happiness will last as long as someone is watching. If you are buying the safety, the happiness will last until the next thing makes you feel unsafe. But if you are buying depth, a thing made with genuine care, a skill that will take years to master, an experience that will change you in ways you can't predict, then you are not really buying happiness at all. You are buying the conditions under which happiness becomes possible, and that is a completely different purchase.